They're claiming lineage because they have to establish credibility over these people that they're ruling. So they're like really trumping up that we're linked to David lineage thing. Whether true or not true, they need something to establish credibility in the region so that people fucking listen to them. So they're like, we're the priestly class of Levites back from Moses. And by the way, Moses didn't just get the 10 commandments from God. He got these 17,000 other crazy ass laws. And so you better follow them. That's what's happening here. Welcome to our Bible study channel.
Energy. Energy. You cannot fuck with this. Energy. You cannot fuck with this energy. Love to all those in the depth. All of those who are listening. Don't listen left is judging me. You cannot fuck with this energy. Energy.
These are videos that go pretty in depth. First thing you should probably do is pause and read our 12 rules for reading biblical text. And if you don't like the 12 rules or you don't understand the 12 rules, well, I don't have time to explain them all. Go back to the book that I wrote and uploaded on this channel, which takes you through the entire arc and how we made these quote-unquote 12 rules as a framework of what we found after 7 years digging meticulously and carefully through the text. So if you're confused, go do that. If I refer back, well, that's probably because we actually post these things in order. So they're all done in series. And if you jump in at the middle of a series without any schema or background knowledge, and you get all pissed off, well, that's also not our problem. This is a group where we go line by line, scroll by scroll through the text. Warning, we are not language sensitive, so if you can't handle some cussing, it's not the place for you. We also do not endorse nor approve of pretty much any mainstream theology. So if you're looking for that, also definitely not the place for you. We do a video about the characters that we use in our Bible study series. And the reason we do this is sort of so that they can kind of get in your head. So we do have a video explaining why we chose the people we chose and how their sort of energy characteristics go along with the biblical characters to modernize it for people so they know what the heck we're reading. Clearly, the Roman Church was not doing their job and looking for the lost sheep of the reunited House of David. So that's what we're doing, okay? We're taking that away from them because they screwed it up. The brilliant rabbis also down there in Babylon are also not looking for the lost sheep of the reunited kingdom of David. So you're not going to hear, let's follow Rome. And you're not going to hear, let's follow the rabbis on this channel. Because, you know, sorry, not sorry, but the Bible wasn't actually written for the corrupt Levitical priesthood post-Babylon and Persia to read it through their little janky books. And it also wasn't written to be read through the eyes of pagan 4th century church fathers. So we're not doing that either. You guys can both have a seat. Oddly enough, the Bible also wasn't written to be read through the eyes of some dumbass scholars with pieces of paper that say they're smarter than everyone, but have never seen a Davidic covenant in their life. Not written for them either. You know who it's written for? It's written for the reunited house of David, who are actually in covenant and are actually the sheep. That's who it's written for. That's why nobody else can understand what the heck's going on. What you are going to hear is what you're supposed to hear, which is, let's follow the king. And let's get started.
So, we are going to war.
Now, I want to take you back to this map just for a second because we're about to get to David. Okay? In this land of Judah, right down at the very, very bottom of the left-hand map, you've got this green area called, this is the area of the Negev, which is a desert area. And you've got Simeon, and right above Simeon, you've got that dark, dark pink, Judah. And we always think of David, Judah, David, Judah, David, Judah. Well, I've got a blue dot. It looks like a lake, but it's not. To the left of the Dead Sea, I colored in a bright blue dot. That dot is huge compared to how big the dot should be. It should be a lot smaller than that. But you see, it's just south of the pink, which is the tribe of Benjamin. And Jerusalem's right there on the border between Judah and Benjamin tribes. And there's that little blue thing. I made it to look like the color of Ephraim. Why did I make that light blue to match Ephraim under the pink? Well, because way back in Genesis, when they were getting their blessings and getting their, Ephraim was awarded a small plot, an unincorporated district, if you will, of land that Ephraim controls, which includes the town, the hamlet of Bethlehem, in Judah. So within this purple-ish area of Judah, there's this one little tiny Ephraim slice of land that they inherited. And in that little blue area of Ephraim, that's where Bethlehem was. Okay? And that's where King David was born. He wasn't actually born in Judah. David was born in the district of Ephraim within Judah. Put a pin in that. We talked about that in the book of Ruth in the Meet David series. Okay? But just know that there was a little, quote unquote, northern Jacobite area in Judah, and that's where David was born. All right, moving along. What do we got now? Who is who? Who are you speaking to in the north? Because they're all confused. And you're going through all this trouble south, and are you sure that's the right guy that was talking to you? Because he's like doing some janky shit. All right, so just to remind ourselves, the Bronze Age takes us from Noah's Ark and the flood all the way through Nimrod and the Tower of Babel. Abraham and his son Isaac, Jacob, crossing over, going into Israel, being slaves in Israel. Now, of course, everyone wasn't taken into Israel because we're just following the oral tradition of one family, okay? And not even one family, but one slice of the family. So we're not hearing really the stories of Dan as much as we're hearing the stories of Judah and Joseph, which is Ephraim and Manasseh. So we're hearing, no one's talking about, Naphtali. No one's talking about Simeon. No one's talking about Asher. But those are really important tribes, and they'll pop up through the Bible. But that one strongest story we've got going between all of these 12 tribes here, right? Because we've got our 12 warlords. The ones we're really talking about are Judah, Ephraim, and Manasseh. These three big ones in the middle, okay? Issachar, he pops up from time to time. Zebulun, he'll pop up from time to time in different stories. But the big thread in this family drama that we're following is Judah and Manasseh, Ephraim, or Israel, which is north and south. Okay? All right. That's a way overgeneralization, but hopefully you get what I'm throwing down here. All right. So we're some of us are slaves in Egypt. We're crossing over. So when I say some of us, I don't mean everyone in the lineage of Abraham was necessarily brought to Egypt in slavery, but a good chunk of them were, okay? And the Jacobites, Moses delivers the Jacobites out of Egypt, okay? Joshua leads them back into the promised land. They're fighting like warlords, okay? We got our warlords or our judges time with all these different tribes, and then we get to David, okay? Now, that's why I picked Negan to be my David figure, because David was brutal. And he had to be, because he was a warlord. David wasn't like this happy king, okay? Like this big giant pharaoh with this fancy, fancy palaces handed down like a Roman or like a fucking king of England. Okay. David was a warlord, period. And David united all these tribes that were in this loose fighting, battling coalition. And he gathered all the leaders of the tribes. So instead of it being this piecemeal, different colored 12 tribes, extended family thing, he brought them all together and made a kingdom. All right, now Saul did actually before David, but Saul was a bad guy. So people were happy, and Israel was doing well under David. Even though Saul was originally the first king, he was a really bad one. So David was the first good king and got all of Israel behind him. Okay, so all the different tribes are now, he brought the family back together for the family reunion, and everybody had a good time. All right, so David's heading up the family barbecue, and everyone's getting along now. All right. That was David's job. But what you need to understand is David, at the time David was a ruler, you can't think of David as being like, the king of England or the pharaoh of Egypt or, Xerxes from Persia or even Nimrod from Babylon or an emperor of Rome. That wasn't David. Okay. He wasn't the president. He wasn't like Putin. David was like the mayor of a pissant little town. So David was a spit on the map. At the time David was ruling Jerusalem, I'm just going to throw out random numbers, and these, give or take 1,000 or whatever. But to give you a general idea, because scholars and archaeologists are arguing over these numbers, some people who are really into making David seem more important than he is for an agenda are going to make these numbers much bigger. And people who want to poo-poo are going to make these numbers smaller. So I'm just going to go on the low end, right, and be very conservative. And I'm going to tell you that in Jerusalem, when David was ruling, he was ruling over 2,000 people lived in Jerusalem. Now I want you to sit with that. He's a warlord ruling over 2,000 people in Jerusalem. That's his city, right? The city of David was south of Jerusalem. So we're talking 2,000 people in the city that that's the center, right? The big metropolis, the booming metropolis of Jerusalem under David was 2,000 people. Now, you can go back to 1988 when I graduated from high school. Redondo Union High School is the largest high school in the country. It's at the beach in Los Angeles, or at the time, it was the largest campus. It's larger than college campuses. And in 1988, there was about, 1,500, 1,800 students in my 9th through 12th grade high school. You throw in the teachers, you throw in, the narcs, and the the security people and the principals and the administration, you've got 2,000 people in my high school. That was David's Jerusalem. Okay, so he was a warlord. Okay, now if you want to extend that out to all of Judah, there's about 500,000 people. And when I say Judah, I mean the whole South. Okay, so we've got Judah, we've got Benjamin, we've got some Levite tribes. Simeon was down there running around the desert. So about 500,000 people in the southern part. The northern part, if you want to add in the northern Israel, right, because they're all getting together at the family picnic now. So the northern tribes, Manasseh, Ephraim, Dan, all those people. Now you've got a few million people, okay? So the whole entire Israel united under David was a couple million. And that is being very, very generous. In a place the size of New Jersey. Now, if you've got 2.5 million, 2 million, even 3 million, I'll even give you 4 or 5 million, which I think is ridiculous, but some scholars are going to argue that. So we'll go to the high end and we'll say, okay, David was like, ruler of 5 million people in Israel at the time. Yeah, it's the size of New Jersey. And today, New Jersey has like 9.2, 9.8 million people. So like half that. Cut the population of New Jersey in half, at least, and maybe in half again. And now you've got the kingdom of Israel under David. So, don't think that he was this big, giant Pharaoh character. He wasn't. Okay? He was a piss-ant little hamlet, spitland warlord. And the reason David was able to come into power during the Iron Age in 1000 BC is David time, okay, is because all of these kingdoms that were around in the Bronze Age collapsed. And there are many, many reasons for it, but it was sort of like a house of cards where everything started to fall. And it's famine, it's war, it's economic issues, it's all kinds of shit. It's climate changes, it's migration, but lots of things were happening. And so just kind of one after the other, like dominoes, all of these giant Bronze Age places fell apart. And so there was this giant power vacuum as we moved into the Iron Age. Okay, which is 1200 or 1000, which is, I think of it as 1000 because that's when David comes on the scene. Iron Age is really 1200 to 550 BC, so it's about a 600-year span. But I just think of it as 1000 because it's easy to remember because 1000's an even number, and that's exactly when David comes on the scene. So the only reason that David was able to have the success that he did as a warlord is because these giant empires had fallen and there was a power vacuum for hundreds of years. So if you were the strongest warlord, right, sort of like King of the Hill, right, Red Rover, send so-and-so right over. I mean, they're playing this giant game of King of the Hill, and David comes out on top because there were no other major far-off empires to control that region at the time. So David was a strong enough warlord. He took that control over this piddly-ass little town of Jerusalem area with 2,000 people, right? And 500,000 of the Judah area. And you add in Israel, and now you've got a couple million folks. And he united this dysfunctional warlord tribes of families and got them all together. Our Walking Dead warlord here. This was the story that I was telling you that happened. We've got these people. You see the little boats here, okay? These are your Phoenician colonies, all right? And Phoenician is another word for sea people, and they sort of come from the Mediterranean islands, okay? So all the way over from the south of Spain, okay, in Europe, to the top of Africa, which we've got Algeria and Morocco, over to Libya and Egypt, okay? And all up around the coast of where Israel is. You can see my little David there with his little blue spot, okay? These guys were extremely advanced. We're not sure where they came from, They're thinking Rock of Gibraltar, southern Spain, islands in the Aegean, which is like, southern Greece, if you will, like the fucking Greek people. We're not sure. So they're just called sea people. And they came from wherever the fuck and went all the way south to the tip of Africa and north through the islands and the tips of Spain. They're pretty far into Spain. They could have been the fucking Spanish because the Spanish were fucking assholes forever. But I don't think so. We think that they are more associated with Greeks, but not really sure. All right. So all of these sea peoples, right, start coming up, down, and all around. And they set up these giant trading places, and they've got advanced language, and they're called the Phoenicians, right? Which is where you're getting this Phoenician language advancement from during the Iron Age. And this is spreading everywhere because they are connecting, because of their mighty seafaring warrior awesomeness, whoever the fuck these people are. They're settling and coming into all these places, going to war with people, pillaging, setting up trade centers. So they're a really great, strong military force, if you will. And they're also master traders, language, like they're really sophisticated culture. All right. So the Egyptians, which are on the downslide now, the Egyptians are, not that big of a deal anymore as they were comparatively, okay, to their history. And they defeat these guys. They have a fight with these guys, which is why if you look to the triangle part of my arrow, you see right beneath that, that's Egypt. And there's no pink in Egypt because the Egyptians kicked their asses and sent them out of town. So this is a story I was telling you before, where Egypt took these guys and resettled them in the Gaza Strip. Okay. So that last little part, okay, right where the pink comes down into Egypt, that's this tiny little spit of a place called the Gaza Strip. That's where the war is going on right now. That's where Hamas is today. So they settled these people in that area, and they basically stood them up like to say, you guys are fucking badasses, so you're gonna protect that border, right? Because you have to remember, these empires, it's not like the United States where there's like, it's all cohesive and there's all these cities that are really populated and this advanced government structure. No, this is like one dude and one family reigning over massive amounts of land with massively different ethnicities, cultures, languages, right? And so they basically just have armies that are putting down rebellions. Like as long as shit's calm, they're going in and taking money and resources, okay? But it's not like a country, like you would think of the United States. It's just, they're going up to Spain and they're taking their shit and making sure everything's calm. And then they're stationing people down in Carthage and taking their shit and making sure everything's calm. And then there's a whole nother settlement on the islands and they're taking their resources and their shit, making sure everything's calm. So these Phoenicians, though, interestingly, have a really wide swath of area all the way across the Mediterranean. So we're talking Spain, Morocco, Egypt, Israel, Turkey, all the islands in between, like these, Libya, Algeria, these guys are everywhere. And they're a really powerful military might. They're brilliant, and they've got a really advanced culture. And they set up these major trading areas in Lebanon. So the Lebanese people today would be known as Phoenicians. Okay. Those are your Lebanese people. And they built these giant trade centers in Carthage, Sidon, and Tyre. And you can see Sidon and Tyre right over by my little David dude standing there with the blue dot, and then also over in Carthage. Okay. So the Egyptians relocated these badasses. They defeated them, but they relocated them over to Gaza to be kind of like bodyguards for that border coming into Egypt. All right. Well, now David is just east of this coastal area that the Phoenicians now control. So they're coming in and out. They're trading lots of goods. They're passing on their gods, their languages, and then also what they're picking up from the cultures from the rest of the places that they're coming from. Okay, so they're picking up shit from Morocco, they're picking up shit from Spain, they're picking up shit from Carthage, they're picking up shit from the islands, and they're bringing all of this trade, knowledge, cultural exchange, if you will, all the way across the Mediterranean and landing it right in David's backyard. Okay. These people in Gaza that the Egyptians relocated, who are Phoenicians, this segment, not all of them, of course, right? But like a group of them. These are what become to be known in the Bible as the Philistines. Okay. And they are in David's backyard along the coast. They're also not necessarily called the Philistines because those were specifically the people relocated from Egypt that Egypt beat. But you've got these other seafaring people who have their trade set up further in the north towards Lebanon. And that was a more peaceful thing. So the people in the south are dealing with the Philistines, and the people in the north are dealing with these trade centers along the coast. I want to say the same people, but they're not, right? Because they're picking up warriors, soldiers, everywhere from Spain to Morocco to Algeria to the islands to like you've got lots of different ethnicities as part of the Phoenicians. So it's not just like, again, one monolithic group. All right. So different experiences with Phoenicians depending on where you live. And the ones in David's backyard set up by the Egyptians to be the bodyguards, those badasses happen to be called the Philistines. All right, moving along. David actually becomes a hitman for the Philistines, believe it or not, but that's another story. We're not studying David today, but I'm telling you, he's a badass. Even when David was ruling Israel, because he was such a good hitman for the Philistines, those are some of the people that really stayed the most loyal to him, even though they weren't necessarily part of the kingdom of Israel. He was, using their might and working together with them and brought them into his army in some cases. And they were really loyal to him. But that's a whole other story. We're not a David. But just know that, different experiences, you can't just say it's a monolithic group of race, ethnicity, whatever. But these guys had a really advanced culture and language. And so all of their shit is getting spread. Good shit, bad shit, janky gods, fucked up DNA, you name it, language, everything is moving through these sea peoples for a really long time. All right. Now, we're done with David. David's long gone, okay? Because we're about 1000 BC to about 550 BC. So in that 500, 600 year span, we've got the Phoenician influence. Then the fucking Assyrians come over, and you can see the Assyrians. This is where your giant empires start rebuilding now. So David had this little time where he was a warlord in this little spit of land, right? And now, because there was a power vacuum, and now you've got all these giant empires coming back. And they're coming back stronger, faster, harder, and more modern than they were in the end of the Stone Age and the Bronze Age. They've got better weapons. They've got better technology. They've got better transportation systems. They've got better trade routes built up. So the Egyptians come back. The Babylonians come back. The Assyrians come back. And on and on and on and on and on. And those are the ones we're really looking at, not because, Lydia and Tubal and the Medes and all these aren't important. It's just to this region, these are the closest ones. So that's who we're going to talk about. So the Assyrians, you can see that dark blue arc come up and around and raid motherfucking everybody and take them off into captivity. Now, they take all of the northern tribes of Israel. Okay? They do not make it through to Judah. So they stop between Israel and Judah. And you have to realize Israel and Judah, the kingdoms split. Remember that whole thing? And we've got two different kingdoms after David. So after David and everybody's at the family barbecue, shit goes south pretty quick. The whole thing falls apart. Everyone's going to war with each other. And you actually have a war between the North and the South happening. So we're all doing janky shit again. Then hundreds of years, guys. Then the Assyrians come down, take all the 10 tribes from the north and cart their asses off somewhere in the Assyrian Empire. Now look how big the Assyrian Empire is. They're all the way up through Lebanon, through Syria, all the way over and across, over into Iraq, Iran, up to Turkey. Like, we're everywhere. Okay? So everyone gets dragged off. Now, some of them resettle and they run south to Judah. Okay? So you've got some mixing of bloodlines and traditions where the northern people kind of ran south to get away from the Assyrians. But not all of them, and I would say not many of them. Most of them got carted off. Okay? But they didn't make it to the southern kingdom of Judah. Now, the Babylonians come along, okay? And you've got they call it the Neo-Babylonian, or sometimes the Chaldean Empire, all right? And that's the dark green. Not quite as big as the Assyrians, but pretty much the same landmass, okay? So basically, the Babylonians just kick the Assyrians' ass and take all the land from them. But they go a little further south. If you look at my blue dot, the blue dot is now under control of the Babylonians. Okay, so that's Judah, the southern kingdom. They didn't get taken by the Assyrians, but a couple hundred years later, they get carted off by the Babylonians. Here's the problem. Not everybody in Judah gets carted off. Only the elites get carted off. And by elite, I mean literate. So your scribes, your priesthood, your upper priesthoods, right? Bishops, popes, people in power of the religious sect, your governors, all of your politicians. So we've got our religious leaders and politicians, which are pretty much the same thing. All your highly educated folks, your scribes, your law experts, all of them get carted off over to Nimrod land. But they left the podunk farmers in Judah behind. Okay? Now, if you look at Assyria, this is their empire now. So you've got massive movements of all of these people are settling and resettling and settling and resettling and settling and resettling and migrating and moving around and getting hauled all over the place. So all of these ethnicities are mixing, not to mention the Phoenicians that we just had from the sea people. All those are mixing. So we've got like a bumper crop of races and ethnicities all running around. And then the Babylonians come in and the same thing happens. Okay? But they left, remember I told you, the swanky cities were in the north. Judah was like your podunk hill towns, your podunk hilltop country towns. All right. And then the desert. Like still today, the bottom of Israel is desert. There's nothing fucking there. All the way down to Saudi. All right. After that, the Persians beat the Babylonians. So the Babylonians didn't really have these guys in captivity for very long. Like 3 seconds later, the Persians now kick the Babylonians' ass, and you can see them in dark orange, that same arc, okay, that same crescent. So they call it the Fertile Crescent because it's following the rivers and the sea and the trade areas, okay? So they take over this crescent area. Now it's the Persians. Now the Persians didn't really want the Judah, the southern kingdomers around, all right? So they're like, look, we're going to let you go back and resettle you over here in your land at the blue dot. We're going to send you back. We're going to send you back over the horn, the leaders that they took. But here's the deal. You can't have your own king because we can't have you rivaling the kingship of the Persians, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to send the leaders that we took before, like, one generation later, like 100 years later, literally. They send them all back, the leaders or the sons of the leaders. And they say, but we're not going to let you have a king, but you can kind of govern yourselves. So have good laws. All right. So now you've got your leaders who have a more sophisticated language. Aha. And they start pulling together in the Greek, because everybody's speaking Greek now, because the Phoenicians brought that over. Okay. So the Sea Peoples. So now this is why we think the Sea Peoples are Greek. So they're all speaking Greek, and they start gathering these oral stories and traditions and going back into the Bronze Age and even the Stone Age oral tradition stories of the region of their people, quote unquote, and pulling it together to make laws to control the people of the region that were left behind on behalf of Persia, Babylon, because Persia and Babylon is the same fucking thing. All right. So they have to come back and rule over this quote unquote Israel area. But who's in Israel now? Well, it's not the Jacobites anymore. They're fucking long gone. All right. The bloodlines have mixed with all of those empires that have come and gone and come and gone and traded and come and gone and slaughtered and moved around and put you here. So their DNA was all junkified anyways. And then they got hauled off from Assyria and they've never come back. They're just gone all over the world. But there's other people that are there, like the Lebanese people and the Syrian people and the Persian people and the Babylonian people and the Turkish people and the Phoenician people and the Egyptian people and the Sea people and everybody that they might have brought along with them and then mated with and then gone somewhere else and then come back. And so everyone's all mixed fucking up. And these leaders come back from Babylon and have to make a legal system to keep everybody under control, so the Babylonians, the Persians don't come back and fuck with them. This is where the Levitical priesthood is born. With the 600,000 fucking Pharisee laws. Right here is where the priestly Pharisees come into power, and the Sadducees, because they're now going back into the old Testament for the Bronze Age and the Iron Age. They're claiming lineage because they have to establish credibility over these people that they're ruling. So they're like really trumping up the we're linked to David lineage thing. Whether true or not true, they need something to establish credibility in the region so that people fucking listen to them. So they're like, we're the priestly class of Levites back from Moses. And by the way, Moses didn't just get the 10 commandments from God. He got these 17,000 other crazy ass laws. And so you better follow them. That's what's happening here. Okay? That's what's happening. And they're starting to gather and write down all of these oral traditions and stories. And so this is where the compromise with the North and the South come. And they're like, well, we have a northern story and a southern story of creation. Let's put it together. And we've got a northern story and a southern story of Moses. Let's put it together. I mean, there's two different stories of the whole golden calf, Aaron slaughtering people in the fields, snakes come out. There's two different stories of Moses, of Aaron, of the priesthood, of David, of the lineage of David, of, who's claiming what. And so the Northerners are like, no, that's not how it was. And the Southerners are like, yeah, that's how it was. And they're all arguing. They're trying to come to an agreement. And so they're piecing together these oral histories from like 17 generations of I don't fucking know, and pulling it together in a series of scrolls, okay, and putting them into a library. But their biggest concern is drawing a direct link to God, to David, and making up the laws to control everybody on behalf of the Persians, that fucking Persian bloodline. So that's where a whole bunch of really fucking janky shit starts happening. And this is like Nehemiah, Ezra, Chronicles. They write this whole book of Chronicles, recounting the entire history, which doesn't actually match with the rest of the scrolls and the books. And so that's kind of where a whole bunch of janky shit started happening right there. That's also happens to be when the Pharisees and Sadducees came into power. And it also happens to be when everyone was speaking and writing in Greek, which is why the Old Testament Bible is written in Greek, because there wasn't anything before then except the janky ass hieroglyphics and oral tradition. So this is why the Old Testament is such horse shit. With like Moses wrote it. No, Moses didn't fucking write it. Moses was dead, okay, for a long fucking time. And they're just telling the stories of Moses. This is the thing. Adam wrote it down. No, Adam didn't write shit, okay? These guys that came back from Babylon, Persia, the Babylonians took them, the Persians gave them back, with the caveat of you can't have a king, but control your fucking people. So the priesthood of Sadducees and Pharisees politically, so they're a political and religious class of elites, come in, and their excuse to this day, what they'll tell you is, we went in, established our connection to God, proved our lineage to David, which gave us credibility to do this, on order of the Persians and the Babylonians, and dug through the Old Testament that was written in Paleo Hebrew, that fucking bullshit language, and figured out all the laws so that we could reteach the people of Israel, Judah, and like foreigners, right? We need to reteach them the original way to worship God. Well, there's a problem with that. Okay? It wasn't the original way to worship God because they added all their laws to control the people. That's the first thing. The second thing is they got a janky ass lineage back to David. That's the second thing. The third thing is they're working for the Persians and Babylonians to control the people. And the fourth thing is the people they're governing, right, are the podunk Judahites who are actually from the tribe of Judah, right, and Benjamin and some northerners that ran down from Assyria. So there's actual Jacobites and Judahites in here living in the podunk farmlands with their goats. But you've also got Egyptians, Phoenicians, Greeks, island people, whoever the fuck came over and was like, your Lebanese, your Phoenicians, your fucking Turkish people, your Arabs coming up from the desert, like all of these migrating peoples over these thousands and thousands of years, they're there too. And they're not interested in following and being quote unquote re-educated. Think of like a re-education camp. That's where we are. We're re-educating them on the roots of their religion because we're the people of David and we're the people of God and we know how to do it. And we went back into the old stories and collected them all together and figured out all the laws because you dumbasses farmers can't read. And you dumbasses over here have been like, fucking everybody and mixing your seed up and worshiping the wrong gods. So we're gonna force you to follow the laws the way we say, because that's our right and privilege. So this is where the Pharisees and the Sadducees come from. And that began in the late Iron Age, which is right around 500 years BC, is when they got carted off. And then we get to the Hellenistic age, right? They're brought back. Okay. So they get carted off in like 500 and brought back. And now the Greeks come along and everyone's speaking Greek. Okay. And we still got our little blue dot. So all of this area, now it goes all the way up to the top of the Black Sea, all the way through Libya and Egypt, all the way through the island people, all the way through Greece, Turkey, and way the fuck over into India, which is probably where you're getting the Indian Jesus from, right? So we've got the Medes, we've got the Arabians, we've got them coming up from the Persian Gulf. I mean, we got Armenians in here. I mean, we're fucking everywhere with this Hellenistic age. This is the spread of the Greek language. So by the time the Persians return them, okay, this whole thing has happened. The Hellenistic age takes over. They start writing everything down in Greek and making their janky ass laws. Okay. This is all happening at about, 400, 300 BC, right in that area. And that is where we're going to stop for today.
Energy. Energy. You cannot fuck with this. Energy. You cannot fuck with this energy. Love to all those in the dust. All of those who are listening. Don't listen left is judging me. You cannot fuck with this energy.